All right, ladies and gentlemen, my special guests joining me are Scott Ritter. He is a former Marine and weapons inspector, and Garland Nixon. He hosts the Garland Nixon Show on YouTube, and he's also radio host as well. Welcome back to both of you.
Thank
Garland,
you for inviting me.
It seems like I just saw you, man.
Oh, seems like we're always hanging out somewhere, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, so to both of you, we have three breaking news stories from the Middle East. The first one, this is wild and crazy, and I think people might get a kick out of this one. Breaking today, details emerge of a secret diplomatic effort to restart Iran talks. So wait till you guys get a load of this one. The Trump administration has discussed possibly helping Iran access as much as $30 billion to build a civilian energy producing nuclear program, easing sanctions and freeing up billions of dollars in restricted Iranian funds. Gentlemen, what are your what are your thoughts? I'll start with you, Garland, then we'll go to Scott. Crazy times.
Yeah. Okay. There's two sides of me. The first side says, well, that's good. That's smart. That would be wise for the United States to do something like that. Here's the second part. If I'm an Iranian, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You think I'm going to sit down? I mean, and this is the sad part about it. This is the sad reality. Me, you, or Scott right now. And somebody says, oh, yeah, come over to my house and have dinner. And you find out, you wake up 2 weeks later in the hospital and you find out they poisoned you. Are you going back to that person's house for dinner? Never. So if I'm Iran, I'm like, guys, that sounds great, but I don't trust you as far as I can throw this home I'm sitting in. So great offer. Have a nice day. Don't come anywhere near me. That would be, I'm sorry. That's just the way I'd be thinking if I were them.
Scott, I thought the U.S. didn't want Iran to have a nuclear program. I'm really confused.
You too? This isn't the U.S. talking, first of all. You need to understand that. This is a transactional president talking, who is, first of all, let me just say, as an outsider with no vested interest in, Iran's nuclear program, if this brings peace, please. I'm not in Iran. I'm not here to tell the Iranians what to do or not to do. And if they want to, if the Iranian government and the Iranian people say, yeah, this is what we want to do, I will applaud the Nobel Peace Prize being awarded to Donald J. Trump. I mean, if his transaction can bring peace to the Middle East, where no other president has been able to do so, wow. But the problem is, that's like me reading Harry Potter and saying, I want Hogwarts to be true too. I think it's really cool that they have this school of magic and dragons and stuff. I mean, I wish that was true. If only you could buy your way out of the Middle East problems. And this is what Trump's trying to do across the board, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be talking about some other Trump initiatives soon. He thinks he can actually take a checkbook and buy his way out of issues that deal with sovereignty, national pride, national security. And remember, this is a guy, as Garland rightly pointed out, he lied to them. Straight up lied to them. And not just a simple little white lie. Hi, honey, how's my dress? Love it, baby. No, I mean, those kind of lies make life go easy. He told a lie that resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Iranian generals, hundreds of Iranian civilians. The Israelis today admitted, I was shocked. Their minister of defense. Yeah, we tried to kill Khamenei. We tried to do that. Yeah, we wanted to assassinate. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Well, yeah, kill a national. It's all right. Yeah, we tried to do that. And that was, remember, Donald Trump was like, we know where you live. We know where you're at. So that meant Trump was trying to kill. The Iranians can't trust the United States. They can't trust any of the actors that were involved in this Pearl Harbor time. This is like saying that Emperor Hirohito could come to America on January 7th, 1942. They open up forget about Pearl Harbor. Forget about Corregidor. How big of a check you need me to write? We'll just make it all go away. You think the American people go, oh yeah, sure, why not? No, America and Israel committed a Pearl Harbor type event against Iran. And I just don't, and this is, it's this, you also have to remember the genesis of this is when the United States in in the 1979 told the Iranians, yeah, we don't care that you're a signatory to the NPT. Yeah, you can't have nuclear power. The whole nuclear program is a big middle finger to the United States, not a nuclear weapons program, but the nuclear program. What it says is you can't stop us from doing that which we're allowed to do. You can't deny us the right to this technology. And it's technology that we mastered ourselves. This is an Iranian solution. This is our national pride. And now you want to open up a checkbook and make it all go away. I think Donald Trump's New York real estate crazy.
Yeah, and let me add that. If I'll put it to you like this. You come to my house, and when I drive right out here to the main road, I think it's out of the community, 35 miles an hour. That's like you coming out to me saying, Garland, I'd like to do a deal with you that allows you to drive 35 miles per hour on that road. The speed limit's 35. I can already drive that. I don't need a deal to drive 35 miles an hour. That's what the law allows. So you're going to make a deal with them to do what international law already says they can do after you tried to kill them. After you're not going to try to kill me twice. The second time, you're going to have to be real sneaky. But the first time, yes, what are you going to do? Hey, Garland, it's going to be like the old Bugs Bunny cartoon where he would have like an X painted on the ground and a piano hanging over top of it. And he tried to coax somebody to stand on the X so he could drop a piano. Really? You're going to, sit right here, Garland, in that chair so we can negotiate. Why is that piano over my head? Oh, we just want to listen to some music later. I don't think so. I think they're going to try to kill me as soon as I went to by the way, who are you going to get to volunteer to be the negotiator? What happened to the last negotiator? They killed him. You ain't going to find anybody in that country that's going to take a suicide mission to go negotiate with these lunatics. It makes no sense to me.
Well, let me ask this. How
Scott, you want to be the negotiator, Scott? How about that? They'll pay you well.
How are they going to even convince that? So what is Donald Trump going to say to his base, like after he just told them that Iran was dangerous and they can't have a nuclear program? Now it's, oh, by the way, I'm trying to work out this deal with Iran to let them have a nuclear program. Scott?
I don't know. I mean, the base, Trump continues to attack Barack Obama for the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the first nuclear deal. Part and parcel. What I love about the American people, and this is love in quotations because this is like the kind of love that you don't mean, is that we are truly some of the dumbest people on the planet about the world we live in. Truly. And anybody in the chat room that takes offense to this, look in the mirror. And look at stupid staring you back if you believe Barack Obama gave the Iranians billions of dollars of American taxpayer money so they can go build a nuclear program. You guys do know that we stole billions of dollars from the Iranians in 1979, seized their assets illegally, that they had paid us for destroyers. Go look at the USS Kidd, the one that the best destroyer in the United States Navy at the time. You want to know why it was the best destroyer in the United States Navy? Because it was built to Iranian naval standards, not American naval standards. So it was like really good. The Iranians gave us the money for that. But then there was the overthrow of the Shah. And we said, you ain't getting this destroyer, even though they paid for it. You ain't getting these airplanes, even though you paid for it. We stole all their money. And then it sat in a bank, and then we started giving it away to people who filed frivolous lawsuits. And the Iranians said, as part of the deal, you got to give us our money back. Our money, not your money, our money with interest. Because ain't that the rule? You hold on to somebody's money, you put it in the bank, the interest isn't yours, it's theirs. So Obama did that. And the idiots, the stupidity of the right-wing base of America, and frankly speaking, even the left wing, because hardly any Americans got it. Why are you giving them money? It's their money. We stole it. We're giving it back. And so, when you have people that stupid, fundamentally stupid, imagine how you're going to feel now going, well, wait a minute, Trump's now literally opening up an American checkbook. Well, actually, what Trump is saying is that he's going to help them find $30 billion. It's not going to be American money. That maybe the Saudis will pay for it. Maybe somebody else will pay for it. But he'll find that money. I don't see the base doing that. And the other thing we tend to forget is this isn't just about the nuclear. One of the big deals is it's the largest state sponsor of terror in the world. It's not, but we call it that way. We got a whole bunch of Americans running around with prostheses saying, I was in southern Iraq in 2005 when an explosively formed projectile hit my vehicle and blew me up, and I lost my arm because of the Iranians. No, you lost your arm because you were in Iraq after illegally invading and occupying it. And rather than blaming the Iranians who live right next door, coming in to help the Shia kick the invader out, why don't you turn to your government that sent you there to begin with? You're blaming the wrong people. You know damn well that if an invader came up to your borders, you'd be out there fighting them. You'd be helping them. If the Chinese invaded Mexico and Mexico said, help us, you'd be helping Mexico repel the Chinese invaders. So we invaded and occupied Iraq, and the Iraqis turned to the Iranians and said, help us. And they did, to defeat the invader, which that way you were. But no American wants to admit that. They all want to pretend they were over there flying Old Glory, bringing democracy to the Iraqi people. There's just a whole bunch of stupidity wrapped up in the United States about Iran. Garland, I heard you talking about the U.S.-Russian summit, where we're trying to overcome Russophobia by having Americans talk with Russians and identify them as real people. Do you know that some of the best people in the world are Iranian? I'm talking about salt of the earth people, cultured, educated. They will take the shirt off, literally take the shirt off their back. They will take the food off their plate. I've been to Iran. I can safely say that 99% of America hasn't. I know these people, not this way I know the Russians, but I'd like to. These are good people. And we sit there and we say the most horrific things about, why they shout death to America? Because in 1953, we overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran, Mossadegh, the prime minister, because he refused to say that Iranian oil belongs to the British, and he nationalized it and said, no, it belongs to Iran. And the Brits went, no, no, no. And the CIA went, no, no, no. And they overthrew him, put the Shah in. And then they spent the next 3 decades helping the Shah build a secret police, the Savak, who tortured and murdered and suppressed the Iranian people. And then when they overthrew the Shah and they took the embassy, they got the documents that we shredded and they pieced them all back together again. They've published a great book with all the CIA documents that document how the United States worked with the Shah to murder the Iranian people. And now you know why they shout death to America. But death to America is a slogan. It's a sort of like a patriotic slogan of, we shall overcome kind of slogan. It doesn't mean death to America. If it did, then they wouldn't have treated me the way they treated me when I was walking the streets of Tehran or Kashan or any other cities that I went to. No, they don't hate Americans. They love Americans. And I'll just say this one last thing too. If there was a natural disaster in Iran today, you could pick any city you want, mudslide, whatever. Unless you have family in Iran, no American's going to pay attention to that. They won't, even if it made, page 14 at the bottom, one line, disaster in Iran, 400 people killed in mudslide. Flip the page. We don't care. When I was there in Iran, I was sitting in a restaurant minding my own damn business. And a family came up to me crying. And they said, we are so sorry. I said, what are you sorry about? Well, apparently there was a flood in Houston and some people got swept away. And they saw it on the news. And they came and they saw that I was an American and said, we're so sorry about what happened in Houston. I went, I don't even know what happened in Houston. They were they know more about our damn country than we do. And their hearts are so big. So the ignorance of the American people about the Iranians is just manifest. I've been saying, I will continue fighting Russophobia. But I think it's time we start fighting I don't know what to call it, Iranophobia, the phobia of Iran, the ignorance of Iran. We have to do the same thing, Garland. We got to cut through this nonsense
I'm with that.
so that stupid people in America start realizing how stupid they are, because it's this stupidity that allows this nonsense to take place. If the American people understood who the Iranian people were, understood the truth about Iran, they would not tolerate for a moment the policies that we're implementing against Iran.
That's 100% spot on. I had a couple of students that were from Iran, and to be honest with you, it was almost impossible to get them here because of everything they had to go through at the embassy just to come here as a student. This question I'm going to ask to both of you. Thank you so much, Daniel. Can you ask Scott about the damage done to Israel? I'll ask both of you. Let's start with you, Garland. How much damage do you think was done to Israel by Iran?
A couple of things. There's two kinds of damage, right? There's the physical damage, which was damage that it's unprecedented because, Israel throws some bombs maybe or something back and forth with some people, but they never really get hit by serious warheads. And they took a lot of hits. They delivered some, but they took some. And here's the difference. Iran's 78 times bigger than Israel. Israel has one major airport. I think Iran has 29. So here's the bottom line. If they punch one for one, Iran wins because it's so much bigger. If they both lose at airport, Iran's got 28 left. You know what I mean? So the point was, yes, Israel got some punches in, no question, but they're so small that they can't take a lot. The other part of that, this is what really devastates Israel. Iranian people, as you know, they kind of have come together, which is, I would say, part of their culture. They felt like somebody was attacking them. They come together. They get stronger. They supported a government that some of them might not even support it. Okay. You know what a lot of people did in Israel? They went back to Brooklyn. They went back to New Jersey. They went back to Moscow, right? If, in fact, the philosophy, as I understand it, if this is correct, the philosophy of Israel is basically this. Look, you're Jewish all over the world. You got to come to here. Why? Because it's safe. There's anti-Semitism all over the place here, but it's safe here. When you lose that philosophy and most of your people have dual citizenship, it's human nature. They're going to go back to where it's safe, number one. Number two, the second half of their philosophy that was blown to pieces. And they do this deliberately. Everybody around, all these crazy, insane Muslim people around us hate us for no reason, and they all want to kill us. I got problems with that, but let's just say they make that argument, which they do. But they can't, because we've got escalatory dominance. Oh, they want to kill us all around us, but we're so powerful they can't touch us. Number one, it's no longer safe. I'm a lot safer in New Jersey. Maybe not much, depends on which part of New Jersey, but you get my point. I'm a lot safer in New Jersey than I am catching Fatah missiles, coming in, number one. And number two, if you're telling me that everybody around me wants to kill me, but we're so militarily powerful that they can't, and that has a hole poked in it, I think that Israel's in real trouble philosophically because so many of their people have another option. And if you got a wife and two kids in a minivan, you're going to go back to where they ain't going to get a bomb dropped on them, where there's no chance of it. I think Israel's in very serious philosophical trouble as far as how it survives and maintains credibility as, quote, the Jewish state.
That's a good point. Scott, what do you think about the damage that was done to Israel from Iran?
Let's just, before I answer that, I just want to put this in a proper context. Israel carried out a surprise attack against Iran that had no justification under international law. It was an act of aggression. Judge Jackson, he was a Supreme Court justice time, who became the lead prosecutor in the Nuremberg tribunals of the Nazis, said that a war of aggression is the ultimate war crime because from that, all other war crimes take place. So let's not talk about Israel. Let's talk about the perfidy of Israel, the surprise attack, the criminal action of Israel, who then compounded it with cowardly attacks against sleeping civilians and attempted assassinations of heads of state, a decapitation strike. So when I start this way, I'm going to answer your question. How much damage was done to Israel? Not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. Israel needed to be punished tenfold for the crime that they committed. The crime that Israel committed is a crime that nation states should not be allowed to walk away from. This is a kind of crime that requires the elimination of the government that was behind this perfidy. But the problem is, an American saying is that means we have to eliminate my government. And of course, constitutionally, I can't speak of doing that unless we do it through the vote. But, because we were guilty as Israel, we wanted this. Our president bragged about this. He bragged about the complicity that he played in setting up this surprise attack, the perfidy of getting the Iranians to believe that there were negotiations, so they lulled into a false sense of complacency so that this decapitation strike could be. He bragged about knowing where Khamenei is, meaning that he was part and parcel of the assassination attempt. How much damage was done to Israel? Not nearly enough. Israel needed to cry far more than they did, but the damage that was done, which is still classified, by the way, the Israelis won't talk about it. They still lie about the numbers because the truth is to expose the frailty of the system. The fact of the matter is, it was Netanyahu who was on the phone crying to Donald Trump, pleading for this war to come to an end. Netanyahu. I'm pretty sure Khamenei was not on the phone asking old Donnie Boy to stop the fight. The Iranians made it clear at midway through this. They said, if Israel stops attacking us, we'll stop retaliating. Okay, they just made it clear. If you stop attacking us, we'll stop retaliating. Which I think underscores the point that the Israelis were hitting pretty hard. I mean, we could talk about what the Iranians were doing to Israel all day long. And they were hitting them hard too, harder than Israel's ever been hit, hard enough to make Netanyahu cry. But Israel was landing solid punches too, and Iran was hurting. The Israelis, they had a 10-plus year intelligence operation in place, over 1,000 operatives, each of whom had, more than a dozen drones. That's 12,000 drones that are flying around assassinating people that they've been following for 12 years, taking out air defense and other sites. They hurt. They knocked out the air defense. The Israeli Air Force was able to have virtually free range over Iranian airspace, dropping big bombs on targets, hurting the Iranians. The Iranians continued to fight. They didn't surrender. They didn't quit. They didn't give up. But let's not think that the Iranians weren't really, really badly hurt. I mean, they're hurt so badly that their foreign minister has to say on national TV, yeah, they destroyed our nuclear facilities. They hit them hard. So I think the Iranians needed this fight to end too. And they were very happy to have this fight end when it did, because even though you can talk about continuing to fight to break Israel's back and all this kind of stuff, the Iranians were two punch drunk fighters. Neither one of them wanted to answer the bell. And we're very happy to see the fight get called early.
Colonel Douglas McGregor said that it was 1/3 of Israel that was destroyed.
That's a
well,
little
I don't
too
know,
much.
but I'll say this: the problem Israel has is that it's small. So a little bit of damage goes a long way because it's not that big. So they couldn't really take it. And as Scott and I talked about, there's the physical damage, there's the moral issue here. As far as Iran's concerned, any country, and I've learned this, and the more I've learned about geopolitics, like for instance, something would happen and somebody would say, well, why didn't Russia go help Syria more, right? And when you learn geopolitics, here's what you learn. The government of Russia has 150 million people that they're responsible for first. You know what I mean? There's certain responsibilities. Okay, you're the government of Iran. Whether you want to fight Israel, continue it or not, your people are getting killed. Some of your people are getting hurt. The government, because you heard, and this is what I hate, people who are armchair quarterbacks. And I understand, but I saw people like in the chat on my show and different things. No, Iran shouldn't have stopped early. They should have kept fighting. Well, that's easy to say when bombs are dropping on your community and dropping on your nation. So the leaders of Iran had a responsibility to the people of their country who, some were being injured and killed, regardless of who was right or wrong, to try to stop violence against their citizens as quickly as possible. And I think they responded as best they could. They got attacked. They fought back valiantly, right? They delivered some punches to the enemy, which people weren't expecting. And then the first opportunity they got, they were able to cease, violence against their people. Here's my opinion. The government of Iran acted responsibly. They defended their country as best they could. They delivered some punches to the enemy. They took some punches and kept on fighting. And then when the opportunity came to provide safety for their people, they took that opportunity, wherein the government of Israel was irresponsible. No matter how much angry I am at the Zionists for all the terrible things they're doing, the government of Israel had a responsibility to keep their people safe. They subjected them to incoming missiles night and day because of some crazy idea that they had that they were going to illegally strike somebody first. The government, for all this, the mullahs are crazy. They're a crazy theocracy. They're nuts. They're insane. They acted responsibly in protecting their country and looking out for the safety of their people. And that's all I can ask. I think they did a good job. I commend them.
But they didn't just act responsibly, Garland. They acted in total conformity with international law.
Good point.
This is a game changer that, I get into this with a lot of people, because I talk about international law all the time and the importance of international law. The same way I talk about the importance of the Constitution. And you have people, the Constitution matters, they make up their own rules and all that. Constitution matters. It's the only thing that matters as Americans, because without it, we aren't a constitutional republic, and we could call ourselves Canadians or Mexicans or something, but we're not Americans. Americans are defined by the Constitution. It's the thing that holds us all together. International law, the United Nations Charter, is important. Well, the United States doesn't obey it. It doesn't matter why have a law if you can't enforce it? Because it separates the good people from the bad people. And over time, that matters. For all the people out there who are like, if I said the American hegemon is in decline, yeah, multilateralism is on the rise. Yeah. Do you know what that means, guys? No. What it means is the Americans who believe in the rules-based international order, they're losing. The rules-based international order was sort of, guys, what you're saying. Just make it up as we go along. International law doesn't matter. The multipolar guys, they believe in the law-based international order. That's the United Nations Charter, the rule of law. They're winning. Why? Because over time, good triumphs over evil. International law matters. You have to have a framework around which we define society. Now, there could be elements in that framework that are behaving poorly. America, Israel, they will get segregated out over time. Iran behaved perfectly in accordance with international law. They did everything right. They condemned the action. They went to the United Nations, said this is a clear violation of Article 2, Paragraph 4. They said under Article 51, we're declaring a right of self-defense. And everything they did was in self-defense. Never once did they irresponsibly expand the conflict. Everything was done right, to include the fact that once the imminent nature of the threat is removed, they stop fighting, which means they set the standard. Stop attacking us, we'll stop retaliating, which is what international law requires. People reread the Charter of the United Nations. Why would we do that? Because you're Americans? Because the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, states clearly that when the President of the United States signs a treaty that's been ratified by majority of the United States Senate, it becomes the supreme law of the land. That's what the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. We voted for the United States Charter, signed it. That means that we're bound to that charter. It is an extension of our law. And it says that you can't go around invading and bombing countries. But we do it all the time, yes. But you know who doesn't? Iran. They're the good guys here. And this is bringing Iran into the fold of the good guys, the multipolar people, the Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, BRICS. International law matters. And Iran is the victor in this conflict because it did the right thing throughout. You know who didn't do the right thing? America, Israel, Europe, but Iran did.
Really interesting. There's breaking news here from Iran. I don't know if everybody has seen this, but Iran has stated that they have intel that Israel planned a false flag operation in the United States. I want to go ahead and first bring in this clip here from this gentleman. He said an Israeli settler suggested a terror attack in Washington because Trump stopped the war with Iran. Check this out.
Israelis believe that they were humiliated against Iran, and here's a proof. An Israeli settler who's famous on Twitter has suggested an attack in Washington because Trump stopped the war with Iran. And the tweet have gone viral. And he have said exactly this on Twitter. A single symbolic bombing in Washington. The bombing in Washington will remind Trump that he is not completely capable and will restore our national dignity. Although he managed to delete that tweet and make his account private, it went viral and reached millions of views around the world within hours. And this is something we need to shed light on to show the real true colors. These people are sick in the mind. They were willing to give their best allies, which is the United States, just to keep their dignity, it's under the ground. It's been like this under the ground. 1 second.
Okay, so and then if you see here, this was reported earlier today. Exclusive Israel planned false flag operation on U.S. soil. Again, this is coming from Iran. It says that information obtained by the Tehran Times shows that Israel was plotting to carry out an explosion on U.S. soil and subsequently blame Iran with the apparent aim of instigating a full-scale war between the United States and Iran. The plan involved orchestrating a destructive event within the U.S. and fabricating evidence to implicate Iran, thereby manipulating American public opinion and prompting military action. Iran uncovered the Israeli plot through information shared by a friendly nation. Upon learning of the potential attack, Iranians sent messages to U.S. officials and prevented the planned explosion from occurring. Thoughts?
Well, I'll put it like this. I don't know. Things like that, slip around. And of course, somebody in Iran could very well have just said, hey, let's say that. It could be true. It wouldn't shock me. Probably wouldn't be the first time a lot of people may believe. But, here's the truth about it, in my opinion. Israel is not an ally to the United States. Israel is not a friend to the United States. Israel doesn't bring anything good to the table. You know what I mean? I mean, if they were like somebody and somebody was dating Israel, I'd say cut them loose. They're dragging you down, dude. Cut her loose. She is dragging your life down to hell. I don't consider them an ally. What would it shock me? They're taking our money. They're disrespecting us. They're destroying an already, a sullied reputation. They've dragged it into the sewer. So would it shock me with Netanyahu? And I think people are there literally like locking people in a little teeny city, denying them food and water, and throwing ordnance on them night and day. So anything that you tell me the Israelis do, there's nothing they could do that I would be shocked based on the things that they're doing. But I mean, that's a discussion. I'm not going to say that there's evidence that it happened. I'm just going to say they are so bad and they are so horrific as allies that we just need to cut them loose, period. Everybody needs to cut them loose.
Scott, your thoughts on this? Because I know last time you were on the show, this is something I was concerned about, that, there could be a false flag attempt if we don't get in line to help them with this greater Israel project.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Garland. You can't dismiss things like this. They have to be, taken seriously and investigated. But first of all, that settler tweet, I don't care. I mean, we have idiots in the United States saying that they want to kill so-and-so. And so the Secret Service is working overtime investigating stupid tweets. Let's just put it that way. And that was a stupid tweet, and I don't want to breathe life into it or anything like that. The source was the Tehran Times, which means it didn't come from the Iranian government. So there's plausible deniability there. This is taking place in a time of where propaganda, both sides are just throwing propaganda out there. So I think we need to keep that in mind, that this just could have been one of those things designed to create uncertainty inside the United States at a time when the United States was carrying out bombing actions against Iran. I'm not worried about it. I mean, I'm not dismissing your concerns, Sabby. I just don't think this report, as it's presented, has teeth enough for me to go, oh, let's do. But on the other hand, I'm with Garland. Let's just lay it out. The Israelis have been conspiring against the United States from day one. We are not their friends. We're their number one intelligence target. Ask the CIA, ask the FBI. Their counterintelligence will tell you the people that carry out more espionage against the United States is Israel. Jonathan Pollard wasn't an exception. He was the rule. He just got caught. And Americans don't understand the damage he did. He stole the crown jewels. You know, if we have an intelligence budget of billions of dollars to build special technical tools, let's call them satellites, and we put them overhead, if that's what we do with satellites, and they collect information, if that's what they do, that it's very. I'll give you an example from the media. Osama bin Laden, before 9/11, was apparently speaking on a satellite phone. And we had identified that phone and the specific number. We built a satellite for that phone so that we could monitor that phone and track that man so we could kill that man. We built a satellite. It cost us a lot of money. And we put the satellite up into space. And when the satellite was launched, there was a magazine called Aviation, Space, and Weak Technology. Aviation, Weak and Space Technology, something like that. But they wrote an article that said, and rumor has it that this satellite is to track the satellite phone of Osama bin Laden. The day that article came out, that satellite phone went dead. It never came back up. And we have a purpose-built satellite orbiting the Earth doing nothing. Nothing. So, you know, that's what a crown jewel is. Pollard gave away the entire book. Everything. Every satellite, every system, everything we did in the world. Everything we did in the world. At great cost. I'm here to tell you I've done operations where guys have spent a year and a half picking apart the frequencies of, you know, the frequency bands and what each frequency does in the city. And if they got caught, they get killed. That's the kind of stuff. Lots of money, lots of, you know, guys risking their lives, guys and gals. The crown jewels. Pollard gave it to the Israelis. And you know what the Israelis did? Our best friends, they sold it to the Soviets to release immigrants to come to Israel. Is that what your best friend does? Gives away the crown jewel, strips it bare. Our intelligence service went blind in the middle of the 1980s because of Jonathan Pollard. He was run by an officer working out of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. The Israeli government was working with AIPAC. I remember when I was doing the thing with Israel when I was a UN weapons inspector, the guy, I met with several people, but near the end, the guy who was my main point of contact at the Israeli consulate, you know, okay, cool. He pops up later because he's the agent runner for two AIPAC people that the FBI, do you remember that guy named Franklin and Rubin, I believe?
Yeah.
Franklin was taking documents out of the Pentagon. Rubin was giving them, turning them over. Espionage. And this guy was running them. He was their agent runner. Our best friends, the Israelis. No, they're our worst enemies. They spy on us. That's it. And so having said that, they're capable of doing anything because they don't like us. We're their enemy. We're not their ally. They're using us. And so while I tend to be dismissive of that report, I'm not dismissive of the notion that Israel is one of the greatest threats to the United States in existence today.
That's right. Doesn't really sound like a friend. That is for sure. Because I was going to bring that up. That one of the things that Ted Cruz, like, kind of let out of his mouth during that interview with Tucker Carlson was that he's like, well, yeah, they spy on us and we spy on them. And Tucker Carlson was just kind of like, why? Why would they spy on us if they trust us, if they're supposed to be an ally? So it's just, I think more people are like waking up to what Israel is and what it has become. I referred to this earlier a couple days ago. I said that I feel like Israel is just a military base. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll share that. I got something, if you can put that up right now. Netanyahu said to have offered Lewinsky tapes for Pollard. New critical book of the Clinton family claims that Israel tapped White House phones, blackmailed presidents with recordings of them. There's a strong argument, and a lot of people have made it, me for one, that the whole Lewinsky affair was an Epstein kind of thing. If you look into it, it was very highly questionable. Remember, what was the woman's name? Linda Tripp, right? You know what Linda Tripp did for a living? You know what she did? Anybody can look it up. You know what she worked for? Military intelligence. And she was working in the Pentagon, being paid by the Pentagon, working for military intelligence. When she talked with Monica Lewinsky, when she take 20 hours of discussion from her friend Monica Lewinsky, she worked in the Pentagon. She had formerly worked for military intelligence. You do the math. And then somehow Netanyahu comes up with all of the tapes of Clinton talking to her. But surely the Israelis weren't involved in any of that's right. Monica Lewinsky, who went to Israel every year.
Yes, she did.
You know what I mean? So as we were saying, are they really your friends? Every scandal you find, there's some, Israel spy in the middle of it. Anyway, so what was your question again? I'm sorry, I got a little freaked out.
I was saying, I think Israel's just a military base in the Middle East.
Yeah, I've argued that. I have made the argument because, there's always the discussion. Does the dog wag the tail? Does the tail wag the dog? I've made the argument, and a lot of people have, and there's a discussion to be made, right? And I imagine but I've always felt as though that Israel is, in fact, a military outpost, that the U.S. looks at the sea of oil, the one place in the world, the lifeblood of industry in the world is oil, and the place where it all is in the Middle East, and we have to have a military and intelligence base there, and that is it. They'll even tell you how many people from Alexander Haig to RFK Jr. to I could go on and on have said, oh yes, it is our unsinkable aircraft carrier. And what is an aircraft carrier again? It's a mobile base that you use to project power. Joe Biden said about Israel, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it to address our interest in the region. You can argue about a lot of things, but from the perspective of the geopolitical actors in Washington, D.C., Israel is an entity that they use to project power in the Middle East. They're flying American weapons, American guns, American everything. Who do you think's going to rebuild where all of that things that got hit by those all those things that got hit by the Fatah 3 missiles and stuff like that? Who's going to pay for rebuild of that? Not Israel. We're going to pay for everything. So my argument is we pay for everything they do. We utilize them. And I'd even say this. Recently, one of the articles that came out in a lot of places was when the bombings were going on, a bunch of Israelis tried to leave. And the government of Israel said, we're not going to allow any of our Israelis to leave anymore. And I thought to myself, fighting to the last Ukrainian, I guess you just have to change that to Israeli, won't you? So they wouldn't even let them leave. They left them there as cannon fodder. So they could say, yeah, a whole lot of innocent civilians got killed. I guess we got to jump in. They were cannon fodder even then. So I think there is a weird relationship where Israel is given a lot of privilege, but by the same token, Israel is also used to some extent for nefarious purposes. So it's a chicken and egg argument in some ways.
Yeah, I think you have a point there. I want to pivot to Gaza really quick because we do have breaking news about Gaza as well. This is interesting. It was announced that Trump and Netanyahu's two-state vision, Gaza's war ends, Abraham Accords expansion. And I just want to go right to this part right here where they kind of break it down, what this would entail. So they are calling this the Gaza peace plan. But everybody pay close attention to these principles here. They reached consensus on these fundamental principles in general terms. They plan rapid implementation, beginning with Gaza warfare termination. Now, a lot of people just saw that part, but they didn't read these steps. So, one, Gaza hostilities will conclude within 2 weeks. Ending conditions will encompass 4 Arab nations, including Egypt, the UAE, to administer the Gaza Strip, replacing the murderous Hamas terrorist organization. The remaining Hamas leadership will face exile to other countries while the hostages gain freedom. 2, multiple nations globally will accept numerous Gaza inhabitants seeking immigration. Now, I'll get back to that in a second. 3, Abraham Accords expansion will bring Syria, Saudi Arabia, and additional Arab and Muslim countries to recognize Israel and establish official relationships. 4, Israel will declare its willingness for a future Palestinian conflict resolution under the two states concept, contingent upon Palestinian Authority reforms. And 5, the U.S. will acknowledge limited Israeli sovereignty implementation in Judah and Samaria. I just pivot back to number 2. I think people need to pay attention to what this says here, that multiple nations globally will accept numerous Gaza inhabitants seeking immigration. So the Palestinian people have said over and over again that Gaza is their home and they don't want to leave their home. So they're making this kind of sound like this would be a volunteer thing if you volunteer to leave. I don't think there's a such thing as voluntary displacement. I think what's going to happen, to me, this sounds like ethnic cleansing. I don't think they're going to get to choose whether or not they want to go. I think they're going to be sent to different countries. So I'm curious to get your perspective about this Gaza peace plan. I think we'll go to Scott first.
First of all the components are known to us. None of this is new. If you remember when Trump first talked about depopulating Gaza and turning into a giant Vegas-style beachfront casino property, suddenly there is an emergency meeting in Cairo, and Egypt and the United Arab Emirates and other countries came forward and said, we have an alternative. And you remember Rubio saying, what Trump was putting on was just an offer, or a proposal. Now there's a counter proposal, and now we begin to talk. Well, this incorporates the counter proposal, whereas they're going to turn control of the Gaza Strip over to this consortium of Arab nations. The voluntary displacement is just a reflection of, American-driven reality, which is if you're going to try and rebuild the devastation of Gaza, people can't be living in a neighborhood that's being razed to the bottom and rebuilt, which is, I guess, the vision of it. And so where do the people go? And, Trump doesn't want to, the Israelis want to get them out so that they don't come back. Trump is trying to disguise this as humanitarian. Oh, well, we rebuild their land. We need to replace. The bottom line is just build a big damn refugee camp. These people are used to living in refugee camps. If they know that freedom's down the road, they'll live in refugee camps for 5 more years if they have to, if the knowledge is that they'll get back to a rebuilt nation. But that one, I think, is going to be negotiable. That's just Trump's, that's him holding on to the final vestiges of his initial proposal, and also the Israeli requirement of depopulation. But it looks like they're moving to make Gaza part of an independent Palestine. And as such, the people of Palestine will, I believe, through compromise, be allowed to stay there. But that's part of the negotiation. The rest of it, look what they're asking. They're asking the Palestinians basically to give up the West Bank for large swaths of the West Bank. Reform of the Palestinian Authority just means that they need somebody like Abbas who's less corrupt but more pro-Israel. It's a total capitulation on the part of Palestine. And I'm just like what I said earlier about the Iranians. It's not my place to tell the Palestinians what is acceptable to them or what isn't, but we have to respect that they have a right to say no if they don't like any of this. And I have yet to meet a Palestinian who would think anything about this deal other than getting Israel out of Gaza was good. But again, we come back to what I said about the president in Iran. This is a checkbook operation. This is Donald Trump's way, bringing in, opening up his checkbook. What do I have to write? What number do I have to put down on here to make all these problems that have haunted the region for decades go away, as if it was always only about money? I mean, Trump world right there. Apparently he thinks it's only about money. What's his solution to Ukraine? Big land deal. That mineral deal, money. We're going to make money and everything's going to be great. No, Mr. President, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And Gaza, I think, is a hell of a lot more complicated, stupid extension of the Abrams Accord.
There's another side of it too. And it's like the, France, Germany, the US, and whoever, von der Leyen, whoever will get together, and they'll negotiate a plan for the end of Ukraine. Oh yeah, well, all you got to do is this. Now let's take it to the Russians. And the Russians are like, you ain't negotiating a plan if we ain't in a room, right? It's the same kind of thing. Let's sit down. How many people are Palestinians or leadership that is in the room? None. You know what I mean? The people who are genociding them, Netanyahu's people, I guarantee they're in the room. The people who are sitting on their butts doing nothing or being complicit in the Gulf states, they're in the room. Oh, yeah, we'll throw in $30 billion. What are they? $30 billion. They got that, most of them laying under their sofa in change. That's pennies to them, right? So you're going to have the people who either turned their backs on them or killed them or sat over here and sent the weapons over to blow them to hell and say they all get a seat at the table to come up with a plan and then give it to the Palestinians and expect the Palestinians to sign it. Justice says you need to bring the Palestinians in, their leadership, have a discussion with reasonable people, bring in countries and representatives from countries that are considered neutral, maybe that both sides can agree this country's neutral. Or I was involved in lawsuits before where you would have a group of people that were going to be like on a little committee, and the plaintiff would say, I picked two people, the defense say, I picked two people, and then both of them together and agree on one person. So you come up with a group of people that is, everybody's happy. We got a group of people to work on this. And then you have good representation. You come up with a plan. But this business about, they're offering Iran a plan. Hey, we've got a plan, Iran. Why don't you take this? Instead of saying, let's sit down and work with them or whatever, they're going to offer them a plan. You either take it or we punch you in the face. And that's what it sounds like. Hey, we're genociding you. Here's a plan. Well, what happens if we don't take the plan? We're going to keep genociding you. These people are insane.
That's it, and that's the point I wanted to bring up as well, Garland. This idea that, first of all, Hamas did not agree to this. This agreement is between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. I'm pretty sure Hamas would not say yes to this. But the other Arab nations, why don't they say, okay, here's the thing. We will agree to a deal with you where the Palestinian people are not removed, where they get to stay in Gaza. But this whole idea of, well, we'll send them to other countries, because the reality is they're not going to be able to come back, and there isn't going to end up being a Palestinian state. I could just see this now, like down the road. They tell them to leave so that we can rebuild, and you'll get to come back when the rebuilding's done. And then they don't get to come back. And so there is no Palestinian state, and Israel takes over that land.
Voluntarily, the ones who voluntarily they'll voluntarily relocate again, just like the people who are voluntarily relocating to El Salvador. You ain't coming back.
This was written by a New Yorker who's used to going down to his condo in Florida while they're redoing apartment in New York City. Hey, honey, we're gonna get a new roof and get a new floor. So why don't we just fly down to Florida and we'll hang out in Miami Beach for 4 months while the contractors come in and they fix up the New York apartment. That's who wrote this stupidity. Yeah, we'll just get the Palestinians to go to their voluntarily go to their Florida condos while
go to the Hamptons. We'll send them to the Hamptons.
Go to the Cape. Yeah, I mean, this is ignorance.
But it was obvious people didn't read this, you guys. Like on social media, people were like, "Yay, they reached a peace deal," but they didn't read the article.
And if they did, Sabby, they don't understand this stuff. Half the problem of Gaza is that it's just theory to so many people, just numbers. We have the American people, gosh, I don't want to say this because I'm just going to get it, but I don't care. I don't care anymore. American people who look like me, I don't want to say anything, but it's like the old Sesame Street song. One of these things is not like the other. Can you guess which one? All right. So figured out what I'm talking about, people. But people who look like me have a tendency not to give a rat's ass about people who don't look like me. We tend to not view their lives as being as important to us. You hear it all the time. They have lots of babies, as if it's just a number thing. You don't think they who have the babies love their babies as much as we who have our babies? We dehumanize these people. We dehumanize them collectively. And so when we look at the horror that's happening in Gaza, look at how much sympathy people like me gave to the Israelis who lost 27 people in this big bombing campaign. But meanwhile, what wasn't being reported is that every day while Iran was hitting Israel, Israel was setting up Palestinians for assassination who were trying to get food at humanitarian distribution centers, dropping bombs, killing 50, 60 at a time, many of them women and children. But they're not looking like me. And so those lives don't matter. They don't count. We don't add them up. You really think the majority of Americans who read about Gaza, all they say is terrorists, and they buy into the Israeli thing? There's no civilians in Gaza. They're all terrorists. They all support Hamas. So the lives don't matter. This is why I get so angry, and this is why I have to stop coming on shows like this, because I just get furious at my fellow citizens. Where is your frickin' humanity? Where is your frickin' humanity? Where is your common sense? Where are the things, the norms and values we are supposed to collectively stand for? Because at the moment you tolerate anything that's happening in Gaza, and you say, well, that's justifiable, you're the problem, not the solution. They can read it, but they're not going to understand it because they have dehumanized the Palestinians to the extent where those lives simply don't matter. They don't equate the suffering. If you told somebody that you would be displaced or your neighbor, they say, oh my God, you can't do that. The harm it does to me. Talk to a family that has to move. My parents were military. We moved all the time, and we moved in the middle of the school year. Do you know how hard it is to take your kids out of a school in the middle of the school year, move them all around the world, and put them into another school? And I did that 7 times. Yeah, you know. Yeah. Okay. But you know how disruptive it was, how, for a family, it's tough. And yet we're asking these people to displace we don't care. But if God forbid that we had to be inconvenienced one time to be torn from our house and sent across, man, we just don't use our brains. We don't use our brains. These Palestinians are human beings. They care about the same things we care about. They care about life. They care about their families. They care about the future. And we have to start treating them as human beings. And once we recognize that, ask yourself, would we tolerate what we're asking of them to be asked of us? The answer is hell no. You know it. Go to North Carolina when the hurricane came through, where we sit there and say, let's depopulate all of North Carolina. People say, no, that's their homes. They need to rebuild. You have to help them. Wait a minute. Why can we do that? Oh, I forgot, because the people in North Carolina look a lot like me. So, we treat them as human beings. But the people in Palestine, they're not humans. They're just statistics.
It's crazy that in 2025, we even have to say that. We have to remind people that, no, they're human beings too. One more question for you guys. Good one here, Malcolm. Sabby, can you ask Scott, and we'll ask Garland as well, if he thinks Mossad could have been behind the bombing on Russia through Ukraine, and did it have the same markings as the ambush in Iran? Good question.
No. I can go into greater detail on this, but the Mossad operation in Iran was 10 plus years in the making. It requires extensive knowledge of Iran. Remember, there's a lot of Iranian Jews who are in Israel, who are with the IDF. Their former chief of staff, senior military people were all Iranian Jews. They have extensive connectivity with Iran through the monarchists, through the MEK, through the Kurds. The Mossad doesn't have the same level of connectivity inside Russia that would be. Plus, Mossad has to be careful. People tend to forget. Vladimir Putin said something very interesting in the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. He said, around 20% of Israel speaks Russian. And he said that means,
oh yeah,
yep,
20% of Israel are Russians. Yeah,
Israel speaks Russian. I was there in the 90s. I'm telling you, that when the Soviet Union fell, hundreds of thousands of Russian and Ukrainian Jews immigrated to Israel. In fact, the scandal was many of them weren't Jewish, but they were pretending to be Jewish, and they were paying off the local rabbis so they could come to Israel and get out of the former Soviet Union, out of Russia and Ukraine. But it skewed the demographics of Israel tremendously. It helped transition Israel into a right-wing state that hates Palestinians, because instead of the old school Israelis who had grown up in the kibbutz and understood the Palestinians, people like Yitzhak Rabin, you started getting in these European transfers who hated the Palestinians, were extraordinarily racist, and it skewed everything. But Putin said, 20% of Israel speaks Russian. And he said that means that Israel is an extension of the Russian nation. So I think that answers the question right there. Israel and Russia are far closer together than many people think. That's why Netanyahu is always calling Putin, always talking to Putin. And that's why Putin's always calling him and talking to him. And it might be one of the reasons why the Iranians are a little bit reticent about, going forward militarily with Russia. They've made a decision maybe to pivot to China, because at the end of the day, Israel is an extension of the Russian nation. Just ask the Russian president.
Yeah, and so you got a lot of Russians, and that's just something that the Russian government has to. For instance, people were saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do business deal with them," and they said, "Look, we've got so many Russian people who also have Israeli that travel back and forth. We've got to have a consulate. We've got to do business. We got to handle paperwork. We have no choice. We got to do that because so many of our citizens have dual citizenship." But of course, if you remember when the war first started in Ukraine. Zelensky was talking to the former Israeli prime minister, I forgot his name, saying, "Go talk to Putin. I want to make sure, find out if he's going to kill me." You remember that, Scott?
Was that Omer talking to Omer?
I think it was because any Israeli prime minister is going to have an open phone line at all times with Vladimir Putin at all times. See, you got to realize, like the really rich oligarchs, there's a lot of Russian Jewish oligarchs and Ukrainian Jewish oligarchs that have citizenship with Israel also. It's a political thing that, it's just a fact of life that if you're in Russia, and you're in power, you have to deal with that. You have to manage that. It can be a problem at times because of the U.S., and it can be an advantage at times. In the same way that they're going to, probably have some people spies there. I will guarantee you that the Russians have some people in Israel that are keeping an eye on things too, that are their spies. That's the way the game works. So everybody's doing what everybody does. There's a relationship that they have to have because of the cultural issues, and everybody's got to manage that. But one other thing I'll say, there was an advantage. If you remember, what happened? As soon as the conflict started, Vladimir Putin said, "I was on the phone with the Israeli prime minister. I was on the phone with the Iranian prime minister." The one advantage he has is any conflicts in the Middle East, he can get on the phone with both sides. Gulf states, they love him. He can always get on the phone with both sides and manage the conflict. So that is actually, he's a very valuable resource for issues and conflicts in the Middle East. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry about that.
I was just going to highlight in 1997. I went to Kiev in October on a mission to meet with Kuchma, who is the president, his National Security Council, and the SBU, to try and convince them to stop a certain Ukrainian arms dealer who was dismantling former Soviet missile bases and things like that, and selling it on the black market, and including trying to send it to Iraq. Very sensitive mission, extraordinarily sensitive at the time. No, here's the you remember Paul Harvey?
Yeah.
And now for the rest of the story. You want to know how I got to Ukraine? I had to fly to Israel and then be put on a flight with a false identity to fly through Istanbul to Ukraine under Israeli cover. The Israelis are tighter than tight with everybody. At the same time that I was doing that there, trust me, I had the approval of the U.S. government and all this kind of stuff. I'm just saying that this, I'm not an Israeli asset. I was working for the United Nations, but that's how I had to get in there. The Israelis facilitated it. The Israelis collected the intelligence about the Iraqis using the Palestinian front in Moscow to tear down ballistic missiles and smuggle it in through Jordan into it. That was their connection with the Israelis are everywhere. They're everywhere. You move a rock and there's an Israeli intelligence agent. They're everywhere. I worked with the Israeli technical intelligence team and found out that they did really interesting things, like every expo. Those expos where like John Deere tractors. We're having a tractor expo in Timbuktu, Indiana. I could guarantee you there's a Israeli technical intelligence team there operating, finding out who's buying what's doing what, talking about this. They're everywhere. And that's the kind of influence they have. They're literally, you can't move a stone without having
looking around too. Sorry.
Oh, look, I already know. The other day, it's a true story. A couple of days ago, people will know. I was doing my show, and like 80% of the way through, I said, "Oh yeah, by the way, did you hear that an Iranian missile struck a Mossad headquarters and the Mossad chief was killed?" Right? And I'm like, "Yeah." And in fact, let me show you. It was like going all over the place, right? I'm like, and as soon as I went to click, my sound went out. And everybody's like, "Oh boy, I think we know what happened." And I brought it up, and everybody's like, "No sound, Garland, no sound." There was nothing I could do to bring the sound back up. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but it sure is interesting. Anybody can look at the video. And as soon as I said, yeah, the Mossad chief was killed. So yeah, they're everywhere. They're right here. They're all around right now. It wouldn't shock me. They're all over it. Google just hired a bunch of Unit 8200 people who owns YouTube. So come on.
Interesting. Well, Garland and Scott, thank both of you so much. Before you go, can you let people know where to find your work?
Sure. Go ahead, yeah, you can find me on my YouTube show, of course. And then, of course, I'm on, Rock Fan and Rumble and that kind of stuff. And I'm on Telegram, all that kind of stuff. So, but my YouTube show mostly.
ScottRitter.com. I have a Substack at Real Scott Ritter, where all my stuff is published, and got a Telegram channel, Real Scott Ritter. That's sort of the brand right now. Got a book out, Highway to Hell, that sort of talks about all the nuclear nonsense that's going on. It's very timely. Unfortunately, I prefer to write a book about nuclear, the danger of nuclear weapons. People go, that's old, man. It ain't going to happen. Today we're dealing with disarmament. But today it's the most relevant book out there on the market because it deals with exactly the issues we're facing in the Middle East and in Russia. And there we go.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.